We are live streaming and it is 7:30, so we'll go ahead and get started. Hello, everybody. Welcome. My name is Erica Ferriston, she, her pronouns. I'm Director of Healthcare for All Los Angeles, along with Maureen Cruz. Maureen Wave and co-chairs Bronwyn Major, who is hosting tonight's evening with us, Chang Sim Lim, and Gina Harris. So, Healthcare for All Los Angeles is a local chapter of Healthcare for All California, a statewide nonprofit, nonpartisan, all volunteer organization. Our mission is to achieve a universal healthcare system through single payer public financing with the goal that all California residents have comprehensive, high quality healthcare. And HCA-LA, that's shorthand for Healthcare for All Los Angeles. We like to start off our events with a land acknowledgement. So we acknowledge the Tongva peoples as the traditional caretakers of the land we currently reside on. We pay our respects to ancestors, elders, and relations past, present, and emerging. If you are outside the greater Los Angeles area, you can find out whose land you are on at native-land.ca. And I want to thank White People for Black Lives for giving us permission to use their land acknowledgement. So thank you for that. Really quickly, tonight's format is we're going to listen to our speakers. We'll have a Q&A at the end. For those of you on Facebook, you can drop your questions in the Facebook chat. And Jason Small, Jason, you want to give a wave? Jason will ask your questions. For those of you on Zoom, you can drop your questions into the chat, and I will ask your questions for you. We're going to ask for those of you on the Zoom, for everyone but our speakers, to please mute yourselves. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Bronwyn Major.
Aloha, everyone. Thank you all so much for joining us this evening for this super important environmental justice edition of HCA-LA's Fourth Monday Speaker Series. My name is Bronwyn Major, she, her, and I am a co-chair of Healthcare for All Los Angeles. So I'm calling in from my phone. I'm not on Zoom. I just wanted to explain why you can't see me live right now. Hopefully, Paul, our tech guru, has my picture up and it's not too awkward. My handles should be dropped in the chat as well. So I'm going to be moderating this evening, and I'm super stoked to hear from our amazing panel. Unfortunately, about an hour ago, we got an email, and Nalleli Cobo, an amazing climate justice warrior goddess, is unable to join us this evening. And this is kind of a perfect example of why we're having this panel this evening and why we are in this fight. So she's been feeling ill and is in quite a bit of pain today, super tired, which is totally understandable, having just battled and beat cancer 100% as a result of living next to an oil well. Her story is incredible, and if you're not familiar with who she is, I encourage you to follow up, read, and follow her journey. So very briefly, Nalleli is a co-founder of the South Los Angeles Youth Leadership Coalition, a member of STAND LA. And at age 9, Nalleli began engaging in community activism for the first time after growing up across the street from Alanco Energy, which was an oil well in her community, and noticed her health and the health of her community started to take a turn for the worse. So they were experiencing nosebleeds and nausea. So she went to work with her community to create a grassroots campaign called People, Not Pozos, in hopes to permanently shut down Alanco Energy. Last year, Nalleli developed cancer, which she is now in remission from, thank God. But basically, she had to start a GoFundMe to pay for her treatment. So she's a true champion for climate justice. So let's all just take a moment to send her Much love and healing. Nalleli, we love you. You are truly an inspiration and will definitely be missed this evening. Please feel better, love. So there is much to discuss regarding the interconnectedness of environmental justice and healthcare justice. So let's just dive in. As Erica mentioned, we're going to save the last 20 minutes for audience questions. So go ahead and start sending those in either via Zoom or Facebook chat. So I feel like bios never really do justice to our stories, and each of our panelists' stories are so incredibly powerful. So thank you all for being here, and you are all gathered here because you are environmental justice warriors. And the environment and our health are intersectional movements. To begin, I want to have you all introduce yourselves and share your story, as well as how it is you became involved in the fight for both environmental and healthcare justice. So Jackie, let's start with you.
Thank you, Bronwyn, and thank you everyone for being here. This is really important discussion to have because we usually see, you know, both topics kind of talked about separately. So really joining them together is so important. So first of all, to introduce myself, so my name is Jacqueline, or Jackie, she, her, and I have a master's in public health. I focus on community health education. It's been a journey to really get to, you know, even my master's, I would say, just the way that I got into this was pretty much a lot of my life experiences. And it had to do with, you know, healthcare experiences that were very traumatic, even to myself still today. So my journey pretty much started, well, I mean, thinking back on my experiences, I still remember when I was 16, my dad had an accident. So basically he did not have health care, and we lost our health care during that time. It was before the ACA was even a thing. So no workers' protection, you know, no really protection towards family care either. So I was, you know, I'm a daughter of immigrants, Mexican immigrants. And that means that, you know, we have to kind of do a lot of the translating and the phone calls and, you know, a lot of that work that usually is not from a child's work, right? And I was calling the insurance companies trying to, you know, find why, you know, we had to pay certain things, or why the bills were so high, why he wasn't getting the care he was getting. I was only 16, and it was such a cruel experience. I would cry sometimes even when talking to these insurance companies, because there just wasn't any really help, or, and, you know, just trying to also fill out applications to, you know, get governmental help if there was any. So my mom and I had pretty much to go through that experience. And then when, you know, even then we didn't have a healthcare for years. Then I was 20 years old when I had like a bacterial infection. That's pretty easy to treat, but the problem was I didn't have health insurance. So the neglect that I experienced during that whole time, it was a year of hell. And even then, I still developed chronic illness after that because I just didn't have healthcare. That was during my, sorry, can you hear me? Okay, that was during my time in college. So once I graduated college, I was gonna study psychology and sociology. And there was just something that I just was feeling like was missing. You know, when it came to mental health, like I was interested in mental health and being a therapist, Spanish speaking therapist, but then I realized, how can people come to see me, or how can I sustain some of the care if we don't have mental health care, we don't have healthcare access? And then I also noticed, you know, through research, behavioral medicine, I was in labs doing some research on diabetes and heart disease. And I realized I could teach these people, you know, what they need to eat or what they need to do. But if they don't have a safe environment to go exercise, if they don't have access to healthy foods and their environment is polluted, what good can I really do at the end of the outcomes? Like, I really wanted to understand where all these layers really were. And then as I started uncovering through research and just meeting with community, I realized there was a systemic issue, and it was colonialism, capitalism, all of these isms that we really have to understand in order to really tackle the core of the problem. And that's when I came to really realize policy was where it's at. And I was working with tobacco control, and I noticed not only how tobacco was being sold in communities and really like in low income areas, but also all the problems that were happening, not only with tobacco, but other stores, and who was responsible for that. So I realized during that work that I needed to do policy a little more focused on that. And I went to community health education because it is encompassing of empowering people, empowering the community, and also doing the policy work that I really think is important, because through my experiences, through the work I've done in clinical work and research, there's just no doubt that systemic issues have to be tackled, first and foremost, intersectional. And I'll hand it out to Josh. Wait, where'd he go? Oh, Josiah.
No problem. I'm here. Yeah, so basically my story as it relates to organizing around environmental injustice and frankly environmental racism has its roots in where I grew up. I grew up in Carson, which is a big refinery city. And it's right next to Wilmington, which has 5 refineries that surround it. And that's really how I started organizing. It was just always something that I experienced as, just growing up in the area and region. And so I continue, it's just something that was the background of my life. When I finally got the chance, a little freedom from my parents per se, I got the opportunity to start organizing. That's why I joined Sunrise Movement Los Angeles. From there, I have continued to push for, the transformations that are necessary for a society that actually is built for the people that live in it, everyday people like you and me. And there's a very clear connection, I think, for me for healthcare justice as well as racial justice to my environmental advocacy. And that's, there's a very clear effect in terms of how our lives are impacted because of environmental racism and the preying on our communities that occurs at the hands of enormous corporations, the same oftentimes corporations that are funded by the people who, the insurance industry and folks and the folks that bankroll them, right? And so when it comes to my advocacy, my activism around environmental justice, it is very much something that has been long aligned with the fight for Medicare for all, the fight for health care justice. And so there's that clear alignment. Like I said, my roots go back to growing up in a refinery town. I had childhood asthma, my brother has asthma, and my father have asthma. And so that always meant that we were put immediately at risk by the enormous fossil fuel corporations who would inject themselves into our communities. Like I said, it was always a background. So in spite of me, being at risk, it was something that was normalized, right? The same thing that we deal with in the healthcare industry, where the idea that we have to pay into these programs is normalized. When you go outside of the United States, people ask like, what the hell is a premium? And so it's really an example of a normalization of a structure in American society in California and in Los Angeles that we deal with. And so, it's another way that these fights are clearly aligned. We know that liberation for all of us means that we have to continue the fight in all of these different areas in order to ensure that we all get the opportunity as Americans, as frankly, as people, to live dignified lives. And so that's really where my fight has been born, and it's where I continue to fight in terms of my advocacy.
Well, thank you both so much for that. And you really hit the nail on the head calling it's a systemic issue. It is. Yeah, and I really loved what you said there, Josiah, about, fossil fuel companies injecting themselves into your communities. It's exactly what they're doing. Is Maria, has she joined us?
Yes, I'm sorry. I'm on now.
Aloha. So, yeah, the question was just to introduce yourself and how it is you became involved in the fight for both environmental and healthcare justice.
Maria Estrada. I'm an activist from Southeast, South Central Los Angeles. I'm on the board of the Native Women's Unity Association. I'm an elected delegate, member of the Los Angeles County Democratic Party. I'm a state delegate for the party, and I was actually asked to run for state assembly against the Speaker of the Assembly when he shelved SB 562, which is single payer healthcare. And I have friends and family who have had health issues, who do not have health care or have poor health care, and it's affected them greatly. Also, given that we're in Southeast LA and we're one of the most environmentally challenged areas in the state, it's imperative. It goes hand in hand. The issues that we have with the environment affect our health, and the lack of health care and being in a very poor area, it's just insult upon injury, knowing that the very people that are blocking healthcare are the very same people that actually appoint the board members for like the DTSC or the AQMD. So they're allowing people on the boards who control and implement policies against corporations that are poisoning us and are not actually doing anything. So there's all these organizations that we know that are in place that are supposed to protect us, but we also know when Exide was poisoning Southeast and East Los Angeles for 33 years, every environmental agency in place was aware that they were contaminating the area with lead for 33 years. They were functioning without a permit, and yet no one did anything about it. And the very same people that were in those agencies then, many of them are still there because they were appointed by people like Gavin Newsom and Anthony Renton and the Senate Pro Tem, which is, I believe, currently Tony Atkins. So it's all connected. The people that are blocking the healthcare are the people that appoint the people to these agencies, and they make sure they appoint their friends who are never going to go after the corporations that are poisoning us. And it's just this really sick cycle. So for me, I just think that it's very important to bring attention to this to the community. People have no idea how the system works. They have no idea who's involved, the players involved, how powerful, for example, the LACDP is and what they can do to actually push to get people who are actually going to be more, who are actually going to represent the community, as opposed to people who are just there for political gain, political connections, and for their own personal gain. So I was asked to run. I've been politically engaged for many years, raising my kids in Ventura County. But when I returned to Southeast LA, I just saw how bad the situation was in the area. Contaminations of all different types of carcinogens throughout the area. Our water has lead, PFOS, PFAS. It's just everywhere. So there's just so many fights on every from every angle, and we're just trying to bring attention to the community about what's going on in the area. And like I said, bring attention to the people and the players involved, because I think that's very important, especially now with the recall with Gavin Newsom, knowing that he's blocking that healthcare bill, that his healthcare committee is just a big joke. And he has the ability and the power to do stuff, to do things that are actually going to better our situation, and he's failed to do so. So.
Yeah, damn, just keeping it real, just dropping it right there, all that knowledge. We're so glad to have you on, Maria, to shed light on really, we talk about this being a systemic problem, and it is, it's toxic, and we need to get money out of politics. And that's why we're here, and that's why we have this panel put together tonight, to start to shed some light on these issues and just show that it's all connected,
Yeah, yeah, and I
Yeah.
think I appreciate you guys having me on, but I think that's very much part of the problem is people don't know how it works, so they don't really know what to do or where to go. And these are things that the more information, the more knowledge people have, the more they'll become engaged. And I think that that's super important. So connecting those dots for people is something that I feel that is like our responsibility, my responsibility. And
Absolutely.
you want to use my platform as much as I can to get that information out there.
Likewise.
So I'm
Yep.
trying to turn on my camera, but I really don't know how. So I'm going to ask my friend here. I'm in Mexico
No worries.
City, so I don't have like.
Oh, right on.
I've been here for a
Yeah.
minute or two, so ¿me puedes ayudar a ver
No
si-
worries at all. I have my picture up as well. So, okay, so let's move on here. So, you know, for a vast majority of Americans, it wasn't until last year, really, when we all witnessed the horrific murder of George Floyd on mainstream television and saw the nationwide response of outright anger and frustration and just grief be constructively channeled and harnessed into deliberate action through the Black Lives Matter movement, that some of us, sorry, but like white folks, finally started to wake up and realize that saying you're not racist it's not enough, and that we all need to be actively anti-racist. So in that moment, almost overnight, we started to see the environmental movement fully recognize the intersectionality of environmental justice, but fell short of really including healthcare justice as a part of the conversation, almost glossing over the United States of apartheid medicine. Here are families and individuals footing the bill for corporate polluters while also receiving tiered care in 2021, you know? So let's get real. Let's talk intersectional environmentalism, its many facets, and abolishing an apartheid institution through healthcare justice. How can we begin to further link these movements and in the process build greater pressure on our legislators? Let's start with you, Josiah.
Sure. I think, you know, first, it always is a big thing for me when I think about the way that some environmental organizations have really, you know, profited off of the fight for racial justice. Here's an example. When you think about the organizations who got a lot of donations from folks during the racial uprisings, Black Lives Matter received a significant amount, right? It might surprise you to learn that the Sierra Club received millions more than BLM. And that's not the only instance of that happening, right? We have numerous instances where the donations of predominantly or historically white movement, environmental orgs, and with long legacies of you know, environmental advocacy and activism, have received the benefit of Black organizing and really, like, you know, taking a lot of that on. I think that when it comes to what it looks like to step up in terms of you know, what it looks like to step up for you know, environmental orgs to really step up for this fight, in particular as it relates to healthcare justice, right, is to really centralize the frontline communities who are impacted by this disaster, by the disasters implemented and caused by white supremacist, patriarchal, heterosexist capitalism. When we talk about, you know, healthcare justice and environmental justice, they're not separate fights. They're clearly aligned, and in the sense that people like me who are Black or poor or working class, you know, are going to be the ones who are always affected at the forefront. The burden is always placed on us when it comes to the disastrous policies of corporate America. And the abuse of our communities comes at the benefit or the increase of them padding their pockets. And so it happens on both pathways, both with environmental justice and with healthcare justice. And let's be very clear, the same racial justice organizers who have been fighting to be, just frankly, be recognized as human, right? As part of American society, are the same people who have been leading the way for healthcare justice. And when it comes to environmental orgs, not stepping up to, put their money where their mouth is, but also actually organize, put their boots and feet on the ground where their mouths are, it should come with the recognition of who's being impacted. If you want to get things passed like a Green New Deal, if you want there to be a just transition, if you want any number of things to be passed, that focus on whatever you're advocating for, put the voices of frontline communities first. I'm sorry, I think I probably got a little bit away from your question, but those are my thoughts.
No, not at all. I mean, it's on point.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Maria.
Yes. Sorry.
No worries.
I'm here.
Yeah, so just kind of your thoughts. I mean, as Josiah just said, it's really surprising to hear that, these environmental organizations are kind of receiving all of this funding more so than like the racial justice movement and Black Lives Matter did last year, and really, kind of organizing and getting, like, how do we start to, link it in a way that we're supporting one another and not profiting off of one another, because it's really sickening to see, and that's not going to get us ahead. That's the same thing that we're trying to fight against of the money and politics and leading us in certain directions. So how do we join forces? How do we further start to link these? Because they are so intertwined, healthcare justice and environmental justice. And yeah, I mean, you coming from a political background, what is the best process to put pressure on our legislators?
Well, I do believe that similar to what we're doing with the healthcare issue, we do need to start trying to reallocate funds, because I don't believe that these environmental agencies really, I think they're like a front. They're there to give the public the illusion that they're overseeing our air and our water and our soil. But the reality is, for example, if you look at the water, not just in my area, but throughout the state, there are forever chemicals all over in wells and aqueducts all over the state. The state of California has the worst air quality in the union. So if we're so progressive and we're all run by Democrats, how is it possible that we have the worst air quality in the United States? The reality is it's all political. So if you look at an organization like the Air Quality Management District, the AQMD, the man that's the head of that organization, his name is William Burke. And William Burke has been appointed to his position of that organization. And he is a self-made millionaire who started the LA Marathon. He doesn't even have an environmental background, but because of who he is and how connected he is, the Speaker of the Assembly has appointed him, even though he was in the position for so many years, knowing what was happening in Southeast and East Los Angeles with the Exide catastrophe. Now, I'm just giving you one example because that's something that's happening in my area, but we could go down the line of numerous things, refineries, and I mean the pollution on the freeway. I mean, you could go down the line. The AQMD has a map, and it tells you on that map the darkest areas that are most contaminated, and you will sit through a meeting and they'll put you in groups, and it's like you're a fucking child, and they'll sit there and tell you, what do you think we should do, and where should we start, like as if it's like a game. Well, if you have a fucking map and it tells you where's most contaminated, why the fuck aren't you doing something about it? Why aren't you implementing things, whether it's filters or things within each municipality, telling them that they have to cut back on emissions of this company or that company or whatever it is, but they don't do anything. In fact, they completely ignore that. And they make it like a game, and they have these meetings that are completely useless. And it's just there to spin your wheels and to waste time and money. And they grants and money to do all this testing, but it doesn't mean shit because they're not going to do anything about it because they already know what's going on. So what we need to do is, I believe, force the issue with, like, for example, the AQ&D, because that's something that I've been working on for a while. It is Anthony Rendon, it is Gavin Newsom, and it is Tony Atkins that appoint these people who are completely useless. We need to, and I know people don't agree with this, but yeah, we need to start going to these people's houses and scaring the shit out of them with bullhorns and fucking flashlights late at night and saying, what the fuck are you going to do about this? Because people are dying, and these same people appointing these people to these positions are denying us health care. So, I mean, we could kill two birds in one stone, really, and say, hey, we want fucking healthcare, and we want people that are legitimate, that are actually going to do something about this. And we need to be more aggressive in our tactics, because all of this, like writing emails and calling, and that's all not going to work, because they don't give a shit. They don't give a shit that we're dying. They don't give a shit that, you know, we're in the middle of this pandemic. People are going to be, you know, evicted on the streets. If they really give a shit, they would have done something a long time ago. This is not something that they're going to do willingly. It has to be forced, and it has to be, in my opinion, in an aggressive manner. And I know a lot of people don't agree with that. And I don't.
Yeah, I mean, well, we saw last year, you know, with the mobilizing of Black Lives Matter, and that was completely non-aggressive. You know, yes, there were that section of people that were unrelated that used it as an opportunity to go in and loot. And yeah, that ultimately is what gained the attention of media, right? And I think that that's really key. What needs to happen is, if you look what's happening in other countries in regards to healthcare and climate justice, is the media talks about this. Here in the United States, you are so hard pressed to turn on local news any point of the day and hear some like real talk. You know, even on CNN, they'll be talking about, you know, climate change, this and that, and then you'll get a commercial from, you know, big oil. So it's, you know, it's really about kind of mobilizing, and in that sense, getting more, not physically aggressive, you know, practicing that non-violent approach, but aggressive in our tactics. Like, you know, yeah, like you said, using our voice, not like camping outside people's homes to get this done, to tell them like, we mean business. It's now or never. We don't have any more time to wait.
I'll be honest, they tried to pass a bill in Southeast LA, and it would have brought us really close to privatizing the water. It's actually would have taken control of the Central Water Basin Board, the votes of, which is a primarily Latino community. Stephen Bradford wrote it. He only has like a small, like a couple of blocks even in that district of the Central Water Basin, yet he wrote a bill that would have predominantly affected like 80% Latino community, would taken away their vote and would have given a handful of people control over our water, which would have allowed them to privatize the water, which is what they're trying to do. So you know that the water.
These are all the things. I mean, this is in the infrastructure bill as well. So there's plans to privatize our water. So that's the next step. Jackie, do you want to chime in here at all, and you know, what your thoughts are?
Sure. Let me just look at the question again really quick. So how do we?
Oh yeah.
Okay, linking. So I think, especially with the pandemic, we can definitely link these issues. Environmental issues such as deforestation, climate change. We're going to have a lot of issues with a lot more mosquitoes and you know, rodents and things like this, because biodiversity is slimming down, and that is something that is like urgent today. And I think like one of those issues is the increase of disease. And with the increase of disease, you're going to have a lot more infectious disease. By 2050, the WHO is already saying that infectious disease is going to be the #1 killer, you know, and not heart disease. So we are literally looking at a climate crisis that is here now. It's not going to come in 10 years or in 2 years.
Yep.
It's here now. And the fact that people
Yeah.
don't even know sometimes that these are, you know, the biodiversity is such an important, you know, part of not only human life, but every being on this planet, because every being does matter in the sense of how we all interconnect. And when it comes to that, we need to understand as well that the health of the environment, the animals, and all of the things that, you know, we breathe and exist in are going to affect our health overall. And with that comes a check, because we obviously a bill, because we obviously don't have universal health care. And I think one of the issues, at least in the Latino community, that I see as well, is a sense of hopelessness sometimes. And sometimes, you know, feeling like, hey, you know, they're not going to do anything. I mean, just, you know, I'm going to live, you know, the time that I can, because the world is going to end at one point, you know. And I feel like the other part of the community who are seeing more of the issues immediately, they're more like, no, we have to do something now. And those are the folks that we also want to, you know, do a snowball effect to let them know and let their neighbors know, like, hey, this is going on in your environment, and we want to let you know that there is something we can do. And I want to give a shout out here to Dr. Hernandez, my friend right here, Josiah. She is an environmental scientist. And she's a doctor. She's doing her postdoc right now at USC. She's doing actually research, community-based participant research in, I think it's in East LA. Please correct me if she, because the work that she does is really important. And it really does have to do a lot with how we're going to also help people understand what's happening. So we're not here to preach people. We want people to really be empowered and know what's happening and know what they can do. Because at the end of the day, you know, people even here, like, I want them to know that you don't have to be, you know, a leader. Like, a lot of people usually think, you know, MLK and, you know, Rosa Parks and a lot of these great figures, right? They have to be something like that in order to do something. And that's just not true.
Oh, no.
So, you know, all of us little people, we can get together, we can be a force, we can be a wave. And I think empowering and letting them know right now how, you know, these things are intersectional and affecting them both at the same time is going to be how we do it. And we can talk about the pandemic, because that is exactly what's happening right now. I think this is the time when even I've talked to some conservatives on the neighborhood councils and be like, oh yeah, we're late on that. We're late on healthcare for all. And they see this pandemic is a climate crisis issue.
Yep, I totally agree.
I mean, this year kind of above, you know, all other years with, you know, battling the pandemic and seeing all of this. And then, you know, especially, well, just recently with the devastating IPCC report, it's been made so painfully obvious that climate change is here. You know, you've got crazy flooding in Tennessee right now. You know, here, fire season here in California is beginning so early, like in the Pacific Northwest as well. I mean, even Greece, Greece was on fire. And then we have this drought that's going on. And then we come to find out, you know, that Nestle's been basically pumping water illegally for years. And we're like, and, you know, PG&E aren't maintaining their equipment, setting fires everywhere. And then we have Oxy using massive amounts of water to frack and, you know, pollute. And then we're told kind of somehow it's our fault, right? Like that we need to conserve water and take those 5-minute showers. Well, you know, as Josiah said, growing up in the community, like you can't breathe, and then we need an inhaler, and that's like $500. Yeah. So I guess, I mean, getting to my final question here is, you know, we have a bill here in California, AB 1400 CalCare. Why do you think that Medicare for all, specifically AB 1400 CalCare here in California, is a necessary piece of climate justice, and how that can, you know, show the rest of the nation where we need to move?
Well, I just like to say that, I mean, if we know that the very people that are poisoning and killing us or allowing that to happen are clearly aware of it. I mean, you don't think Gavin Newsom doesn't know what's happening with Exide and, I mean, the fires. It's also Gavin Newsom and Anthony Rendon and the assembly that protected PG&E. 6-time convicted felon, killed 88 people, and protected them. If you look at their FPPC filings, they all took money from PG&E. It's all a sick cycle of shit, and we're the ones on the bottom getting shit on. I feel like in regards to what you were just saying and about not everybody being a leader, public records requests and getting copies of lab tests and publicizing in local groups on Facebook and allowing the people to see what's in their water, what's in the air, that information alone freaks people out and gets them engaged. I did a protest at a mayor's house and then publicized the lab tests for the water that showed the PFAS, the PFOS, and all the contamination, and people went crazy. So they showed
that's the NIMBY, right? The not in my backyard. When people see it happening to them, that's when people start to rise up. And it's happening here in California. It's happening everywhere. We can see it. And, we have an opportunity here. And it's hard with politicians, right? It's politics, but we need this piece of legislation and we need to pressure our legislators. So
absolutely, because if you know that they're poisoning you and they're making you sick, the least they can do is give healthcare. And the amount of money that it would save, the amount of money. You could post the videos of Newsom talking about how much money it'll save this state. It would have saved us by the end of 2020, $111 billion. So don't tell me that we have a deficit because of COVID and unemployment when you fucked up and you didn't do what you should have done a few years ago. So now you have the opportunity to do it right now, to save lives, save money, and you have no fucking excuse. And that's why this whole thing with the recall, let him drown. I don't care at this point because we're not going to get environmental justice with Newsom. We're not going to give health.
We need to vote. We need to vote no. If we want anything to do, this is not about Gavin Newsom though. This is a Republican recall, and that would be scary. That would be terrifying. It would be over if that were to happen. So that's a whole nother issue of keeping Gavin in office and just putting more pressure on him. Yeah. Jackie, what do you think? Why do you think CalCare is a necessary piece of climate justice here in California?
I mean, it's super necessary, and it should have been passed yesterday, but we have now, and our political leaders, can definitely be the people who make that change and make it happen right now to relieve a lot of us in the pandemic. But more than anything, I do want to say it's a crucial part, because I want to revert back to the pandemic. When we look at redlining and historically redline areas, and how horrible it is that, all of these fracking and all of these places that refineries that are out there, it's in the red line areas. And you look at the infectious rates and the higher deaths of the pandemic, and it's in those areas. So you will see in the red line areas, the same people being affected by this pandemic and the highest rates of affected people. And with less hospitals, less clinics, less doctors that actually even care really about this issue, because there's no doctors really there working permanently. We know that, we cannot have a comprehensive healthcare system without actual stable hospitals and clinics that actually build trust in the community. And that's a reason why we're also having, issues with that. But we need healthcare now, and we need to be able to tackle these issues that are going to increase with wildfires and all of these other natural disasters that unfortunately, they're coming.
Yeah, they're here, and people are getting sick, and we need justice. We need climate justice, and we need healthcare justice. Josiah.
Yeah, I'd love to bring it back a second to something that Jacqueline said, which is about, the climate disaster that we're in right now. It's not something that's happening in the future, it's happening right now. You know, I just recalled reading, I think it was in the New York Times, that almost 20,000 COVID cases are linked to wildfires, and the spread of, you know, pathogens and the like. I think, you know, when we talk about climate justice and trying to fight back and making sure that we have a livable future, it's very clear that the disasters that we are experiencing as a consequence of climate change, which have been brought upon us by you know, corporations who just frankly didn't care what they were doing in the first place, right? I mean, who knew about the pollution and the disasters that they were causing way back in the 80s, right? These issues, the increase in death and the increase in sickness as a consequence of climate change, the link is very clear. And so when it comes to the necessity for legislation like AB 1400, when it comes to the necessity of CalCare, when it comes to the necessity of Medicare for all, it's very clear that, you know, the IPCC report said that for the next 30 years, we have basically baked in a 1.5 degrees Celsius increase from pre-industrial levels. That means that for the next 30 years, we will continue to experience things like the largest single source wildfire in state history caused by PG&E. That means for the next 30 years, we're going to continue to see, you know, the raging of droughts and you know, we just heard a report not too long ago that the Colorado River was drying up. That's Los Angeles, one of our biggest sources of water. The link to, you know, from climate justice to legislation like Medicare for all, very clear. And without having Medicare for all, without protecting our communities, knowing that these disasters are coming, it means that we are repeating the same mistakes that brought us to this position in the first place. And it is until our legislators, the people in power, step up to the plate and make sure that we are protected from future disasters. I mean, they've already been criminally negligent up to this point. So it's time for them to fix the problem that they helped create and were complicit in creating in the first place. So until they step up to the plate, or we get somebody to replace them and actually advocate for the interests of us, of the everyday Los Angeles resident, the problem is going to persist. And so that's why we need CalCare, AB 1400, Medicare for all. And until we get that, we're going to continue keeping up the pressure, and we're going to continue fighting to make sure that it happens. And that's why every environmental and climate justice org should be supportive of this legislation and making sure that California leads the way in supporting and uplifting its communities, the ones who have especially been victimized and abused at the hands of the same type of for-profit corporations who abuse us via the so-called health insurance system that we have today.
And those same corporations own our politicians, and that's why we're here. The bottom line is the ultimate enemy is capitalism, and no, whether it's indigenous culture, indigenous people, no living thing could survive ultimately with capitalism, and that's where we're at. We're at end stage capitalism, and that's why we're here right now, right? That's what's preventing the healthcare. That's what's causing all this environmental issues, and we're literally run by, I mean, Gavin Newsom doesn't even know what eggs and milk cost. So I have no idea how he got elected. I have no idea why he's elected, but we don't have people that actually understand what we're dealing with on our level. So they don't give a shit because they're at French Laundry having a nice Merlot with their lobbyist friends. And what we're dealing with is irrelevant to them because they probably have some place that they could go to hide or whatever. But
let's go. Sorry to cut you off, Maria.
No, go ahead.
We're going a little bit over time, and I do want to leave these last few minutes open for audience questions because I have been seeing some come in on Facebook. So
okay.
I can't tell you all how grateful I am to have you here. Thank you so much for bringing your passion and heart, and it just really shows, and I'm blown away by all of you. So let's go ahead and open it up for audience questions. I'm going to kick it over to Paul, and I think Jason is monitoring the questions. So take it away, guys.
Hey, Jason, do you want to go first with Facebook, or you want me to take one from Zoom?
Oh, go ahead. Call on me.
We have Maureen.
Yes. Thank you, everyone, for being on this call. It's fantastic to hear from you all. Jackie, I'm aware of a report that you wrote, I'm not sure if it was a thesis or something, on the effects on children in terms of, I think it was autism and ADHD and those kinds of problems. I was very aware when I was canvassing for Maria, many homes had children with these kinds of disabilities in Southeast LA. And I'm a nurse, and before I was a nurse, I worked with autistic children when I was in graduate school in psychology. And I was shocked at the number of children who were affected. We also see a rise in asthma, rise in ADHD, rise in autism, and rise in obesity, which has to do with children not being able to go out and play when the air is so bad. So can you please comment a little bit on the statistics from the paper that you did? I was so impressed with it.
Sorry, my computer's a little slow. Hopefully you can hear me, right? Okay. So this was a paper that I did for my epidemiology class, and I focused on lead for this one. And it was really shocking to me because my professor was doing some studies during that time in that area with pregnant mothers. And her study focuses on longitudinal studies, which, she's still doing it. We're still going to be seeing some of the effects later on, unfortunately, and it's such an unfortunate case. But I don't remember all the statistics, Maureen. It's been like 3 years, but basically what was found in when you look at the literature reviews as well, and as I do want to mention, Dr. Hernandez in this call right here, she also specializes in that. So definitely check out her work on this because she does it with the community right here in East LA as well. But during that paper, you would see all of the areas that were affected by lead poisoning in the soil and the air and the water, and a lot of increase in neurological issues among children. And not only neurological, but literally the entire bodies and their internal organs, pretty much being, detrimentally, slowly getting more ill. And these are the issues that, communities have to live with. And this is again, historically redlined area. Nobody really, and you look at the papers and the redlining, when they were doing this, and they knew what they were doing. They were racially targeting these areas, the freeways, all of this, specifically because brown and black little kids and families were living here. Yep. And basically right now still, I'm not sure if this is solved. I doubt it, because last time I think it was 2 years ago when I went to a meeting at the Department of Public Health. It was a health equity labs, that's what it's called. We all pretty much were discussing this issue, and it was still not solved. There's still no money at all for public health to fix this. They're still testing, for some homes. I think it was only like 300 homes out of 80,000 of them that had been looked at that were even tested and that were even approached, and that, the process is very slow. And this is the reason why, a lot of people do say, why, they don't do nothing. They come by, they know something's wrong, they don't do nothing. Yeah. And this report pretty much showed that even schools and LAUSD have lead in their water fountains. Yes. So kids are being poisoned. And this is seriously one of those issues. I know that the judge recently last year just, let it go. He let it go. These are kids that are being literally, killed. I would say at this point, it's like genocide. And we would have to be real with these words.
I'm so glad you used that, because 100%. They said I was exaggerating when I used the term.
No, it is, because it's targeted. And we know redlining was targeted. So if you're deliberately putting these issues upon the lives of Black and brown kids and families, this is deliberate. And that is genocide. And that is racism, and it's funded by that. And when I did the report, I only looked at the biological issues, right? But systemically, I know, and policy-wise, we know the underlying issue, and it is, racism that does drive a lot of these capitalist and imperialist types of policies that won't change with just voting. And that's the thing I'm telling, some folks, like, you can't just vote and just hope that things are going to get better. None of these people really care. You have to show up, you have to be there, you have to pressure. And in order to better help everyone in LA, and in particular people who are hardest hit, we have to seriously do something. I sometimes I get really, exhausted because, you know, we do have a lot of research. We have lots of research and we need more. We need more, but we have enough to say, we got to change. Like there's not 1 ounce of research you won't see out there that says there's something wrong in it. And they specifically mention, scientists specifically mention what needs to change. So the policymakers, all they have to do is make that change, because, you know, they do show you what the implications are. They do tell you and suggest to you what should happen. And the community there will tell you as well. You don't need, it's not, how do I say it? I no question. There's no question.
Yeah.
Jason, you got something from Facebook?
I do. Thank you, Erica. So this question is from Dylan, and it's for Josiah. He's asking, what is the largest municipality / active oil field in the country? And additionally, who is most affected and in what ways?
Sure, thanks for that question. I do believe that the largest, within Los Angeles, we have the largest oil field west of the Mississippi, which means, I mean, you can look to any area. You can go to the Los Angeles oil. I mean, the Los Angeles oil field had a lot of their oils capped, but one particular community that has not had their oil wells capped. In fact, they're still very uncapped. The community of Vista Hermosa, if you go there, you will find numerous examples of where there are uncapped oil wells just poisoning the soil. And you know, smelling the sulfuric smell of rotten eggs, and just how much it has really impacted the community. You have kids playing in these areas. And another example is in Wilmington that I mentioned earlier, where you have in just this small strip of land, you have refineries, and then you have on top of that oil wells in the backyards of a lot of these folks' homes, right? Like the idea that we have allowed for such a thing as industry to be happening in somebody's backyard, right? That we have allowed such clear forms of not only environmental racism, but just the plain poisoning of people, right, to happen in clear daylight. But the lack of care and oversight at the hands of our legislators, at the hands of our elected officials, who have allowed that to persist, and not just allowed it to persist, but have opened avenues for such a thing to happen. One thing that I can't help but think or call to mind immediately is Joe Buscaino and the way that he has enabled such things to happen in the community of Wilmington. He frankly only cares about one area in the district he represents, 2 areas in the district he represents, and that's downtown and San Pedro. He doesn't care about anything in between Watts or Wilmington or anything in the Harbor Gateway corridor, right? I mean, just the failure, the absolute failure of politicians who claim to be progressive, or frankly, even a Democrat, to address these harms is an example of why things need to change. I'll also say that when it comes to something that, you know, Jacqueline was very much talking about in terms of her research, I think is very important, and I think needs to be uplifted in terms of the environmental racism that a lot of communities have been subjected to. I can think of multiple examples, right, from the Exide plants in Vernon, and as well as like I think another community that's been impacted is Watts, when I think about the accumulation of, you know, industrial toxins that have been seeped into their soil. And on top of that, I think about not too long ago, I think in Cudahy, there was early in the pandemic, there was a plane whose jet fuel was just, you know, thrown out on elementary school, right? And we think about and something else Jacqueline brought up, which was the redlining of communities that have affected Black and Brown communities. You think about the places like the LAX and the airport, right? In that airport, which is near El Segundo and Inglewood, like these are Black and Brown communities, right? Think about how the corridors through which these airports pass through, and a lot of the poisoning has happened, right? And on top of that, the workers in a lot of these airports who experience the poisoning of yep, you know, their community at the hands of these people who made billions upon billions of dollars over the course of this pandemic, right? Like, to me, it's just another example of how and why, you know, legislation like AB 1400 is so important, because clearly, you know, the victimization of our communities is continuing. And I would actually say that AB 1400 is the bare minimum, right? We want something entirely comprehensive. Not only do we want Medicare for all, for our communities, for the entirety of the city and state, but on top of that, we need redress to the harms that have been perpetrated against our communities. On top of that, we need actual a just transition that puts frontline workers who are in the communities, who have the knowledge to transition from a fossil fuel extractive economy to something that lays the foundation for greener places, for our communities to live, breathe, work, and play. And on top of that, just the continued renewal of a society, a transition to a society that is not the same that we live in now, but one that centers and focuses the work of everyday Angelinos. And so that's really, you know I kind of went a little off topic, but it's really just an extension, a clear through line of the work that needs to be done in order to bring about a society that is better for all of us and not just the few.
Who's going to follow that?
Wow.
I know.
Right?
Beautifully
Mic drop
stated.
right there.
I think we have time for one more question. If you have one on Jason on Facebook, we'll take that. Nope. All right, then I think that I will pass it to Bronwyn to close this out.
Well, thank you all so much. You know, Josiah, that was incredible. Like, you are just a wealth of knowledge and information and truth and just putting it out there. I'm so grateful to have you here this evening, and our entire panel. Thank you, Jackie. So blown away by your dedication and your research, and just really happy to have you on the HCA-LA leadership team. And thank you so much, Maria, for joining us and giving us that, you know, that truth, that insight, that behind the sort of scenes of what's really happening. And we need to know this, and we need it so that we can activate, right? So that we can really use that to rise up and say that we have had enough. And that's really what this is about this evening. I've had enough. I hope that you've had enough. And I hope that you will join us in the fight for environmental justice, climate justice legislation, a Green New Deal, and AB 1400 CalCare. If you would like to connect on more ways to take action, please go ahead and follow us on social media at HCA Los Angeles, you know, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and now TikTok. And then go ahead and join our HCA-LA team at bit.ly, join HCA-LA. Los Angeles City Council is voting on the CalCare resolution this Wednesday. So we need all hands on deck, calling, emailing, making public comments, you know, getting out there. It's super important for the state of California because LA has such huge pulling weight. We have less than 5 months to organize, educate as we are tonight, you know, activating as we are tonight. Just, we've reached our limit. And then we need to lobby our legislators to pass CalCare AB 1400. So let's do this. May the force be with you. Much love and mahalo, everyone. Have a great start to your week.
You too. Thank you so much for having me on, and everyone have a
Thank you,
great rest of your
everyone.
week.
Have a great evening.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Much love, y'all.
Thanks for
Good
coming.
night. Thanks so much.
Bye.